Welcome back to the P S Gilmore Story, episode 33 of the 1872 World Peace Jubilee, and it's part 9, the Strauss Ball in Boston. Isn't it strange for those of you that visit Boston today that there isn't as much as a plaque or a marker showing where these events took place in the hub? It's crazy that such events as the 1869 National Peace Jubilee, which took place for a minimum 5 days and was as big as Woodstock 100 years later, or that the 1872 World Peace Jubilee took place for 18 days and had 21 concerts and was as big as Band Aid was in London in 1985. And yet there's no marker today. But today, we're going to look at a memorable event that took place in Boston during the 1872 World Peace Jubilee, a memorable occasion that must have caused more than a flutter in the hearts of the young ladies of the city that were lucky enough to attend. And that event was indeed the wonderful Jubilee Ball, or as I call it, the Strauss Ball, in the Coliseum on June the 26th, 1872. Very little details survive to this day, but the details I'm now sharing with you in this description and the accompanying detail in the photographic representation have been collected over years and are now part of my collection, thankfully, with the exception of the autograph at the end of the slide presentation. By the way, if you have any friends that are Strauss fans and don't know about this story, please share it with them. I'd suggest that you play some Strauss compositions as you play this documentary, as I don't want to run the risk of getting barred for copyright infringement, but it will help to create an authentic atmosphere to the story itself. Here are some of the list from the Johann Strauss performances in Boston in 1872 to help you in your choice. First one, Wine, Women and Song. Number 2, 1001 Nights. Number 3, Kunster Leben. Number 4, Neu Wien. Number 5, Jubilee Waltz. Number 6, On the Beautiful Blue Danube. Number 7, Circassian March. Number 8, Annen Polka. That'll give you some ideas to choose from, and I apologize for any mispronunciations. There's no doubt that Johann Strauss was, even in Victorian times, every bit of the attraction of any modern sex symbol. His wife, I believe known as Jetty, was indeed a wonderful manager and realistic to boot when she purchased a Newfoundlander dog with wavy black hair for those ladies who wanted some of the wavy locks of her husband, Johann Strauss himself. Hundreds of ladies camped outside his hotel during his stay in the hope of just getting a glimpse of the fantastic composer, but he was well guarded, not only by the dog, but by his wonderful wife. And so when the announcement was made that there would be a Jubilee Ball in the Coliseum itself, there was a rush on ticket sales. And considering that a gentleman and lady jointly were $5, and an additional lady on the same ticket was $3, these tickets were not cheap. An average labourer in Boston at that time would work the complete week for over $3, so not too cheap. But this date was not to be missed, especially if you had a few free daughters at home sitting in hope of finding a future husband in life. That $3 in that case would be a cheap investment. And so once the daytime concert of June the 25th in the Coliseum was finished, immediately afterwards the Coliseum was stripped of its furniture and redecorated for the gigantic ball. New decorations were installed for the event, such as the chandeliers on all uprights, and in the event of the combined light of the new additions and the existing 2,500 gas lights not being sufficient, there was even plans in place to use calcium lights to throw more light on the dance floor. And so the floor was stripped and seating was moved to the sides, with areas for tea, coffee, refreshments, and of course suppers, which was standard in those days, in ample supply. And now they were ready for the multitude of crowds to descend. Between the stage and the parquet, palms and broadleaf plants were brought to separate the people from the wonderful Viennese Orchestra. And so, with specific areas for the important guests like President Grant and his wife and the complete cabinet, US cabinet, in attendance, mixing with ministers from foreign governments, leaders of states in the Union, and so on. This event had very much an international atmosphere from a global perspective. Few details survive, and there are even fewer reports of the night's entertainments indeed, but there is mention that when the evening entertainment was completed, there was even an orderly lineup of patrons waiting for horse-drawn hackneys to bring the people back to the city and service the huge crowd. The crowd, by the way, was in the it's estimated to be between 5,000 and 10,000 in number, a not inconsiderable number to service by horse-drawn carriages. There's no doubt that the publication of the Strauss scores, pictured here as well, especially entitled Gems of Strauss, which was 250 pages, offered full-size scores of Strauss compositions. Of course, this was the rage at the time. Pianos were the new fad in homes now, and sales of the book were boosted by this concert and, of course, his appearance in the general 1872 World Peace Jubilee. But for the occasion, I would like to offer exactly as printed in the daily newspaper of the Jubilee days. You remember that this was printed up specially for the event, offered daily at the huge price of 10 cents per copy, and gave a kind of a jovial report of the event. The newspaper poked fun at the participants in the Jubilee and the events of each day, but this report is particularly important in the absence of any other descriptions of the event. And so on Thursday, June the 27th, the day afterwards, this was printed in the Jubilee days and offered for sale. We had engaged a reporter who is noted for his stock of adjectives to furnish us with a special account of the Jubilee Ball. An account which was meant to surpass in liveliness of fancy, and still more in profusion of specimens of the qualifying parts of speech, anything that ever appeared in the column of any newspaper in the world. We grieve to say that our well-laid plans have come to naught. Our special reporter went to the ball. On entering, his eyes were observed to acquire a wild expression, as though he was completely dazzled by the brilliance of the scene. Presently he began to wander around helplessly, intoxicated by the almost overpowering odour of the flowers. The beauty of the ladies who promenaded upon the floor of the Coliseum only served to aggravate the state in which he was so rapidly falling. We noticed with serious apprehension the melancholy results of the too attractive preparations of the ball committee for the occasion, and we sighed at the prospective failure of an arrangement which had promised to afford so much pleasure to the readers of Jubilee Days. But we were not prepared for what followed. Strauss took his violin, and the orchestra began to play one of his most fascinating waltzes. Our special reporter, as if moved by the impulse he could not resist, rushed upon the floor, addressed to a young, beautiful lady some words which we could not understand, but which, from the frenzied state he was in, must have seemed simply gibberish. Seizing her by the waist, began to twirl and twist around the floor in a most absurd manner. We tried to reach him and remind him of his duty, perhaps recall him to a state of sanity, but he eluded us. At an early hour this morning he was still madly and purposely skipping about on the floor of the Coliseum. And we left him there, a mental wreck, to pen these few words of apology for having no detailed account of the ball. Finally, I would like to include a letter from Herr Strauss to a Viennese musical journal, printed on the 28th of June, 2 days afterwards, describing the Jubilee from his own perception. It's entitled, Herr Strauss on the Jubilee. Strauss had just addressed a letter to the editor of the leading Viennese musical journal, of which the following is a translation. Being convinced that a genuine recital of the arrangements and the great success of the Boston Jubilee will be of particular interest, especially as great doubt has existed in Europe concerning the whole undertaking and the accomplishment of its announced programs, I must assure you that not only has everything stated been carried out, but that a great deal more than was agreed has been accomplished. The giant Coliseum, elegantly constructed and perfect in acoustic arrangements, has an auditorium capable of seating over 50,000 persons. Besides this, the musicians number some 1,500 instrumentalists and nearly 20,000 singers. A monster organ, blown by steam power, noble in tone and overwhelming in its effect, is reared at the back of the grand platform. When the European idea of the standard of music in America is considered, the realization of so successful an undertaking is simply wonderful. It was only made possible by perfect organization and the willingness of everybody to make personal sacrifices and labor unceasingly for the general good. Thus, it is that the repute fable has become a present truth. When I consider the grand effects of the fresh voices of the chorus, the splendid orchestra and the mighty organ, I'm forced to confess that the Jubilee is a superbly impressive enterprise, and this noble impressiveness results not only from the large masses of performers, but also from the talent and admirable precision with which all the music is executed. From all portions of America, the people flock to join in the festivities and every day witness assemblages of upwards of 50,000 persons. I cannot deny that my joyful experience in this extraordinary affair is marred by one serious thought. That is, that in Europe, where exists every musical advantage and where such an artistic undertaking ought to be much easier, there is no one with the enterprise to perfect such a grand international gathering. The 4th day of July will close this incomparable musical event. Signed, Johann Strauss. And so ended the only visit and series of performances of Johann Strauss in America in 1872, 150 years ago. I hope you've enjoyed this story and look forward to more of the P S Gilmore Story next week. Please click like and subscribe, and as I said before, please contact me if there is any family connection in your house with the Jubilee or with the previous Jubilee. Indeed, email me at gilmoresband@gmail.com. And so, until then, take care and thank you for listening. Bye now.